hope these words relax you. Chapter 27, Dharma Yatra, a pilgrimage of peace. Summer 1997. Before stopping in Los Angeles, Swamiji and I were in San Diego, on our way to the temple where the Dharma Yatra program was about to be held. Swamiji said, "And you'll be giving a short talk on Indian culture." What? The only formal public address I'd ever given was my bat mitzvah speech. At Stanford, when I organized the first Earth Day event held on campus, I gave a spontaneous, impassioned exhortation to those passing by on their bikes to get off your bikes, step on Mother Earth. We live on this planet, touch it, imploring them to learn about the great environmental groups I'd brought together for the celebration. Visit the stalls, read the pamphlets, understand what's happening to our Earth. But that hardly counted as a speech. Now, with less than 10 minutes till we'd arrive at the temple, I had to think about what to say and how to say it. "Swamiji, are you sure? Maybe not tonight. Maybe after a few days of seeing how these events go." No, he said casually. "You can start tonight. It'll be good for people to hear it from you." I don't remember what I said that evening, but by the time my name was called to speak, I was so drenched with perspiration that I rose from my cross-legged position to walk onto the stage. My silk sari stuck to the back of my knees. I could feel my face turn red, then purple, as hundreds of San Diegans of Indian ancestry watched me bend over and extricate the fabric from the backs of my legs. That night, I learned why Indian women wear cotton petticoats beneath their saris. It turned out that I love public speaking. I learned that if I could just bear the anticipatory anxiety, the 20 or 30 minutes of sweaty palms before actually walking to the microphone, I had found a passion. Will I get to speak here too? I began asking as the days went by. "Yes, of course," Swamiji always replied. First, I loved the subject matter. I had spent almost a year being transformed by the culture of India. Yes, it was a placeless, nameless, cultureless experience of awakening when I first beheld the divine that had changed my life. Yes, I had been given a gift deeper and bigger than any country, a gift of the palpable experience of God in my life, one I had experienced in and through almost every person I met in those first weeks. And yet, aside from the spiritual ecstasy, aside from the formless, boundaryless oneness of spirit and consciousness I felt myself merging and melting into, aside from that, everything else I'd been given and had learned was from the culture. From the barefoot children with glistening eyes, I learned that things do not buy happiness, that being privileged might not be the same as being fulfilled. I learned that contentment can be hearing devotional music streaming through loudspeakers all day long. I learned that getting A's on exams and memorizing facts and figures do not make you smart, that the accumulation of information can block the flow of real wisdom. From nearly a year of service, I learned how fulfilling it is to give to others. The work I would have deemed boring when done for myself became joyous when done as seva. I learned that connecting with God both within myself and outside myself, in all the ways I'd experienced over the last year, was the stuff of which my happiness was made. All these lessons are fundamentally elements of Indian culture, what they call Bharatiya Sanskriti, the culture of India. It was there in the eyes of the children, in the eyes of the sweepers, in the eyes of the old women chanting their mantras on Rudraksha beads as they sat by the water's edge. It was the secret to a happiness that pervades village India despite lack of material wealth or progress, to share these experiences with Indians living in America turned out to be great fun. During the year my previous husband Jim and I had been in Ecuador, I had discovered how much I love teaching. Standing before the class, sharing something that excited me, had been a great joy. I had known they would love the material because of how much I loved it. In the same way, I loved India. I loved all that India had given me. To stand before an audience and share what excited me was even more fun than teaching. I didn't have to worry about a lesson plan, keep notes of what I'd said so I could ask about it on an exam, or write legibly on a blackboard. I just had to speak from the heart. Something precious happens when I speak publicly. It's deeply meditative for me, and I experience the presence of grace. I don't feel like the speaker. I feel more like a listener. That which is spoken seems to flow into me as well. It seems not to come from my mouth, but rather to flow into my mouth from a well that I'm drinking from too. After San Diego and LA, we spent an evening in Bakersfield. I had lived in Southern California for 25 years, and it had never occurred to me to visit Bakersfield. As it turns out, Indians live there. Many of them. There's even a large ornate Hindu mandir. There I gave my third public speech on the richness of Indian culture. A year earlier, immersed in American culture, I had viewed foreign cultures as places for holidays, culinary treats, fresh mountain air and linguistic affectations, adventures that included chocolate croissants with espresso or hot melted chocolate fondue served with fresh strawberries on the end of wooden sticks in the Alps while goats and sheep nibbled at bushes nearby. Foreign cultures were things to adorn myself with, whether jewelry from the streets of Lausanne, not sure if I pronounced that name right, or sweaters knit in the mountain villages of Ecuador. I had been an avid traveler, but I had never really delved into the depths of other cultures. Here I was, a curly-haired Californian, expert in the locations of every Whole Foods market between Studio City and the Bay Area, yet so entrenched in Indian culture that I was giving talks on the importance of Indian Americans holding on to their heritage. The most essential gift you can give your children, I urged, is the gift of your culture, heritage, and roots. Nothing money can buy comes even close to the value of connecting to your ancient yet timeless tradition. The dichotomy between Indians in India and Indians in America was poignant. The Indians in the United States, and particularly the younger generation, were trying to be American. Too ready, I felt, to forsake their own heritage. I was saddened to see this, for it was Indian culture, the mesmerizing intoxication of the arti and every nuance of ashram life that I felt had handed me the gift of deep peace. I wanted to help the Indian youth in America see the crucial thread between their roots and their own happiness. So, I found myself draped in a green sari, standing before a crowd of 500 Indians in a Hindu mandir, urging them, with references to the Hindu epics of my goodness, I know this word, Ramayana and the Mahabharata, to stay connected to their culture, to embody devotion to Hanuman, the monkey god, in their own lives, and in Bakersfield, of all places. I woke up the next morning with a smile on my face. I'm in Bakersfield, I said to myself as I laughed, realizing I was still sharing a body with a Los Angeles girl. But by mid-morning, we were on the way to Alamo, east of San Francisco. I drove up Interstate 5, windows closed, air conditioning gently blowing on a low cup holder containing a bottle of water and devotional music playing from a single cassette Pujya Swamiji had with him. Swamiji and Kishori Vyasji, a renowned exponent of the epics, later to become Swami Govind Giriji, were asleep in the back. I lowered the volume to avoid waking them. Interstate 5 runs north to south, dividing California in two as it runs through the Central Valley, a vast irrigated agricultural region that provides more than half the produce grown in the United States. Wow. The scenery stays pretty much the same for hundreds of miles. Stick-straight rows blossoming with oranges, strawberries, and almonds in every direction. As the fields blurred my peripheral vision, I blinked to keep myself in the present moment. How many times had I made this drive from LA to Stanford and back? The trip was always one that required a wide-open driver's side window, out of which I'd blow cigarette smoke, plus cup holders full of icy Diet Coke and a bag of candy to keep me going. James Taylor, Sting, or Cat Jims would blare from the tape deck. I'd sing full throttle. The idea of a drive without constant stimulation was inconceivable. How would I stay awake? What would I do with myself while I drove if I wasn't extricating juji fruits from my teeth and keeping up with the James Taylor? I added the definite prefix, the James Taylor. Just James Taylor. At the same time, now less than a year since I'd left the world of hyperstimulation, I drove stimulated by life itself and by the bewilderment at how my life had magically been changed. Was it really the same I-5? Was it the same I? It seemed familiar, yet different, like déjà vu from a previous life. And I think there's a word for that, isn't it? The complement of a déjà vu, where you know you've been here before, and yet it doesn't seem familiar, compared to the regular déjà vu, where you've never been here before, and yet it seems familiar. Sounds like you and Sadhviji share a music taste, dear Sky Guardian. Does déjà vu equal life plan? Asks Piavelli. If you're wondering in a philosophical sense, maybe indeed. If you're wondering in a linguistic sense, I'm not sure what it literally translates to, but it refers colloquially to a moment where you feel nostalgia or a wave of familiarity wash over you for something that you know by your logic is something you haven't experienced before. And here our author is experiencing just the reverse. Gregorji, you share, it's called jamais vu, when you feel unfamiliar with something that is actually familiar. Thank you, dear Gregorji. I know I can count on you. We spent July and August traveling through the United States and Canada, staying a day or a maximum of 2 days at each location. Each evening was a different venue, typically a Hindu temple or community center filled to the gills with elegantly dressed Indians excited to have saints in their midst. Each program began with singing and ended with food. Sometimes a full dinner was served. Sometimes it was just crispy samosas and chai. Sometimes it was temple prasad, the blessed food given by the priests, trail mix or ghee-laden mush called halva. We never stayed for the food, as we took our meals at the homes of devotees with whom we stayed. In Raleigh-Durham, Columbia, Knoxville, Nashville, Tampa, Louisville, and Lexington, cities I'd never dreamed of visiting, I was welcomed into the homes of Indians who had migrated to America. Each evening, after I gave my 10 or 15-minute talk, Swamiji and Kishori Vyasji would speak. Swamiji always began by chanting mantras, and they echoed through the hallways amid a pin drop of silence. Then he gave a lecture in a mix of English and various Indian languages. I sat melting into his words and his presence as he encouraged everyone to live in peace, not pieces, to be better and not bitter. His method of teaching is so simple. Connect with God, serve humanity, worship the Creator, serve the creation, be grateful, be happy, and focus more on sanskaras than cars, more on yourself than your shelves. Sanskaras refer to impressions, hopefully positive ones. Kishore Vyasji gave his talks in Hindi, and so I didn't understand, although I loved being in his presence. When we were alone or in small groups, he spoke to me in English, so I knew he could, but clearly the Indians were happiest to hear their native tongues being spoken by these saints. Always remember 3 things, Swamiji instructed: your mother, your motherland, and your mother's tongue. A cow does not forget how to moo. A bird does not forget how to chirp. You should not forget your mother tongue. I loved being part of a traveling religious troupe. Or troupe. I don't know how to pronounce this word. It clearly comes from French. Seeing all the Hindu temples and being places where people talked only about God and spirituality, I could now recognize which statues were Krishna, which were Rama, which were Shiva, and which were Hanuman and Ganesh. That one's the elephant-headed son of Shiva and the goddess Parvati. I prostrated before each in full devotion. Me, bowing to a statue. I couldn't believe it, but I did it because I was overwhelmed with gratitude and devotion. Each marble or stone image I saw smiled at me. Each pair of eyes bore into my own. Krishna stood, flute in hand, poised elegantly on one foot, coaxing me to play. His eyes wouldn't let go until my heart was on the ground at his feet. "I love you," I whispered, as though our affair were a secret. My eyes spilled tears on the carpeted floors of temples across America. Next to Krishna always stood Radha, the graceful epitome of devotion. In Vrindavan, in what is now Uttar Pradesh, where Krishna played in the stories of his youth, the greeting is Radhe Radhe. It is said that Krishna loves his devotee Radha so much that he comes wherever she is, so people pray to Radha to appear so that Krishna will come too. On a deeper level, it's not so much about her appearance as it is about our own ability to manifest, experience, know, and become her. So, in longing for the presence of Krishna, we must first attain or become Radha. Radha, I would pray silently in each of these temples that had sprouted up in a country that no longer felt like my own. Race me and bless me with devotion like yours. Let me be drowned in the beauty of love for God as you are. Enter me, Radha, become me. Let me become you. Prostrating on the carpeted floors, I would raise my head and look up at her eyes peering down. My chest grew as I took a breath. A bit of her was flowing into me. My beloved Hanuman. He is a brahmachari, literally, one moving forward on the path of Brahman, or one who knows Brahman, the ultimate supreme reality, though more colloquially used to mean celibacy. It is said that women are not supposed to even touch Hanuman's statue, but I couldn't help myself. Whenever I saw a statue of Hanuman, on one knee, hands in prayer at the feet of Lord Rama and Sita Ma, which are Hanuman's Ishta Devata. or standing brave and tall, his hands pulling his own chest open so we all could behold the image of Rama and Sita within his heart. I had to touch him. I would sneak furtive glance. Another new word for me. I would sneak furtive glances behind me, lest the priest or another devotee was watching. And then, if the coast was clear, I'd reach out and touch his feet. "Oh Hanuman," I'd pray, "please give me some of this devotion. Let the power of grace flow through me as well. Let me be as devoted as you. Let me be just as a vehicle for the service of God. Come into me, Hanuman. Let me and let me become you." Or become me and let me become you. As I looked up from the ground, his face always seemed to be smiling down on me. Even when it was just his profile as he knelt at the feet of his Lord, I could feel him saying, "Yes, yes, yes." A pulsing embrace. "Yes, I will come into you." And my chest would again swell as I breathed. It was the feeling I'd had at the foot of redwood trees as my face rested in the rich, wet soil beneath them. It was the feeling I'd had lying on my back at the base of these trees, watching the refraction of the sun's rays through the interwoven lattice branches hundreds of feet up. Yes, yes, come into me, fill me with your light and grace. Yes. That's the end of the 27th chapter. Thank you for listening. Bit of a longer one, but a wonderful one at that. I certainly respect her deeply for paying homage to a rich culture. One may say it is not her native culture. That may be true, but can we say that it is not her own when it is given freely from the land itself to everyone that crosses path with it? I think the culture that this land of India has given this world is one of the greatest gifts to our planet, and certainly deserves to be cherished by all. But when we say India, we might think of countries, but it's not about a country, as countries are a relatively recent idea. They only came into existence a few centuries ago, but culture is something that transcends country. It's tied to country as it means the land itself, Mother Nature, which, yes, is localized to one particular region of geography, but her aroma spreads across the whole world as she feeds an entire global ecosystem. And I love how at the end of that chapter, she pointed to such a subtle point, which is, not only can one have faith and reverence for the divine, but we can have faith and reverence for the virtues of faith and reverence as exemplified by devotees. And I think it marks a beautiful tradition in the East of praying not just to the divine, but to beings that have walked the land who were themselves really good at praying to the divine. And so we pray to ask, how are you so good at that? Can I learn from you? And it's just so selfless. Anyway, thank you for listening. Namaste.